Hey, what is up, everybody, and welcome to May. I know it's not May technically, it's technically still April, but I'm starting May early because I don't like to start in the middle of the week when it comes to new topics. So welcome to the first episode of May. And in May, we are celebrating Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I don't have too much in the Pacific Islander, but I'm definitely going to touch the Asian area right now. For the next month. And so this is obviously where all the ladies at. This is a podcast where I dive deep into history, myth, and legend and put a spotlight on women and try to figure out why the fuck there is not enough of them in history books, because there's so many amazing women that did some pretty outstanding things that just seem to be forgotten or, edited down or all that kind of things. Hold on a second. Let me just a little bit. I think that's good right there. All right. So, and who am I? Hold on. We're uneven. There we go. All right. And who am I? I am your host. I am Kim. I am a history nerd, novelist by trade, and I do a bunch of other stuff. I've got some more businesses going. We may mention something of that in a little bit. I am super excited about May. We've got some amazing women, some amazing goddesses. And I really tried, guys, when I made the list for these, to go to places that maybe we don't think of all the time. Granted, yes, I went to China. There's one person from China, there's one from Japan, but I also visit Vietnam, Thailand, couple other places, right? And when it came to the goddesses, I tried to do the same thing. I want to start though by doing a little housekeeping and shameless plugging, and then we're going to jump in. And I really want to start this podcast out with explaining why Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month is so important. It's not something that's celebrated globally, but in the United States it is, or was, a special holiday, and I want to get into why that is and how it came about before we jump into the goddess of the day, which is Umay, who is a Turkic goddess. And I know if you hear the word Turkic, you probably think of Turkey, but you're kind of right. That's not where those people started. They kind of were nomads and migrated. So we'll go through that when we talk about the Turkic peoples. So before we get started, like I said, let's do some housekeeping, shameless plugging. If you want to reach out to me, you can definitely do that through my socials. I got Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, which is getting... I'm trying, guys. There's a lot on my plate, and sometimes I think I'm a Capricorn, so sometimes I think I take on a little too much, and then I just have to work out the schedule. But I think it's getting there. It's getting there. If you want... Or you can use an email. I got an email there too. I would be great. I would love to talk with you guys. If you want to support the podcast, like, comment, share, follow, subscribe, all those amazing things. The more you engage with the video or the audio, the more the algorithms thinks, oh, something's here. Some people are really loving her. Maybe we should show her to more people. And that would be amazing, because I really do want to create a community where we can celebrate these amazing, badass ladies. If you have cash and you want to kick it my way, there's ways to do that too. There's a Buy Me a Coffee and a Patreon. So, if you can, that would be awesome too. I could, if we do, I could maybe get some better equipment, a better mic, a better lighting, all those kind of things, right? Really up the game a little bit. If you want more on this and so much more, make sure you check out the Medium publication. As I said, I am a writer by trade, so I definitely have that. And if you are into mystical, magical things, you might want to check out my other podcast. It's called Our Mystic Road Trip, and there I talk about tarot, crystals, ley lines, Ouija boards, all kinds of interesting stuff, along with spiritual stuff like life coaching, wellness, shadow work, all kinds of stuff. There's going to be some amazing meditation, things like that. So if that's something you're into, check me out over there too. It's pretty fun. All right, that's it for the shameless plugging and housekeeping. So let's get started with the very first podcast episode for Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. All right, guys. So before we jump into Umay, I really want to talk about why I'm choosing to continue to celebrate these months despite someone saying that they're not important. So first off, like a little history on it, right? So API Heritage Month has started in is celebrated in May as honest, right, in the United States. And it really was meant to, and is meant to, not was, is meant to kind of celebrate the rich history and cultures and contributions of people from across the Asian continent, and the Pacific Islands, in in the world, really. Granted, when we celebrate in the United States, we concentrate on those that have contributed to the U.S., but I take it globally because there's been so many amazing people, Asian have Asian heritage or Pacific Islander heritage, that really has done amazing things. It was originally established in 1978, and it was only a week long. And that was thanks to the efforts of, I want to get his name right, Congress members Frank Horton and Norman Mineta. In 1992, it was expanded to a full month, and May was chosen for a couple reasons. In the United States, May was in 1843, the first Japanese immigrants came to the United States. And then also in May 1869, it was the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, which was primarily built by Chinese laborers. And though I don't know if we should really celebrate that because the conditions that they did that under was less than, it was quite challenging. And there's a huge history there about Chinese and Asian immigrants in the United States, and it's a dark history in some aspects. So I don't really want to go into that because I really want to focus on celebrating the diverse identities of these people and how they both triumphed and challenged. They were both both had challenge. How do I say it? They both the API communities and everything really had a lot of triumphs, but they also were faced and put up against a lot of challenges, and yet they still stood strong, right? I really want to use this month to kind of really amplify some amazing people. And granted, they're not going to be Asian Americans. They're just literally people throughout history. People like Kutulun, Wu I can't say her name. Wu Zhetain. I'll get it better by the time I do her. And a bunch of other like amazing women from the Asian history, right? Because if we share these stories, even though, once again, this is primarily an American celebration, if we share the histories of these amazing women from the past, we can see the spirit and the fact that these women, and men, but I concentrate on women, really stood up against a lot of challenges and overcame a lot of things. And I think it's a way that we can build bridges across communities, right? It's a way that we can honor the full spectrum of what it means to be a human, because I really truly feel by celebrating these women, we're showing that we're all kind of the same. Oh, I've got a little tearing going on. Wow, I didn't think I was gonna get that emotional. It really shows that we're all basically the same. The only differences, and the differences that we do have, are so small in a lot of cases that I think, but we seem to put an emphasis on them and not looking at how we're all humans and we all have experiences that may not be exactly the same, but they have, you know what I'm trying to say. I'm saying, like, we're all human and we all have a lived experience, and a lot of the times that lived experience and the things we want and the things we wish for and the things we dream of all tend to be the same, right? It may be a different package, but the core principles are the same. And so I really like celebrating these months. And This is a new thing that I'm doing at the beginning of these. I haven't been doing it, really talking about where it comes from and why I do it. So if you really like it, let me know. I think it's important to understand the why behind things in every aspect of your life. So that being said, that's a little bit about the month. And so, as I said, we're going to be going through some amazing women. We're going to hit things like, for the history, Kutalun Wuseshan, Razia Sultan, Muraska Shikabu, and the Trung sisters. For the myth, we have Umay, which is Turkic, Tala, Filipino, Dawai Lanjar, which is Indonesian, Nang Quoc, which is Thai, and Paiju Yan, which is Vietnam. I tried to go a little bit all over the map in Asia and tried not to only center, like I said, on China and Japan or Korea, which is the three that I think most people focus on. I want to get a little bit outside of the box a little bit. So that being said, we're going to start Myth Monday with Umay, the Turkic goddess of motherhood, fate, and protection. She is sometimes referred to as the Turkic mother goddess, and she is a guardian spirit, and she is just, wait till you hear about her, all right? So why, before we get started, we have to really talk about the people and their beliefs, right? So if I say Turkic, like I said at the beginning, most people think of Turkey, right? But the Turkic tribes were like nomadic, semi-nomadic tribes that kind of roamed a really large stretch of Central Asia. This included Mongolia and Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, parts of Siberia, and they would later migrate into Anatolia, which is Turkey, and Eastern Europe. And so they had an impact on a lot of different regions, right? Both culturally and politically, right? You have done so let's start with, let's just look at this, right? The life on the steppes, which is where they were, it was really harsh. It was, you had to be adaptable, you had to be resilient, right? You had to have a connection with nature and the unseen forces. The Turkic people really relied on horses for travel, warfare, and everything. So horses were a big part of their culture, right? Their society was structured in clans and tribal alliances, right? And their religious belief system reflected their need for protection and prosperity and harmony, and they had to have that with nature, right? The spiritual world of the Turkic people was very, very animistic and shamanistic, right? They had a belief called Tengriism, and I think I said that right. I don't know if you say, so it's spelled Tengriism, so Tengriism. So I think you pronounce both. It's basically centered around Tengri, right? Tengri is the sky god, and that was the supreme force of balance and fate, right? Tengri governed the heavens. While on earth, all living things were infused with spirits. The mountains, everything had spirits. Very similar to, not exactly the same, but very similar to like Native American beliefs. You had Tengri, but you also had Umay, and that's the goddess we're talking about today. She was the mother goddess, right? She was believed to protect women and children and really ensure survival. Because here's the thing, sometimes we think about these cultures and we don't realize that we look at cultures and we say, okay, the women had to bear the children, cook, clean, and everything, but taking out our more modern thoughts on being a woman, and remember, I am a feminist, so that is important to me. You have to think about the fact that for these tribes, women were basically the only way we're going to keep going, because the next generation would keep going. So in a way, women were the core of the whole foundation, because without women, there would be no next generation, right? And I know that sounds sometimes very strange to think about if you're a super feminist, but that's the truth, right? Women had the power because they had the children. The role of women, this is a good segue. So unlike a lot of patriarchal societies, the Turkic women had a lot of freedom and power. They could own property, they could participate in political councils, they even led armies. Some historical sources mention warrior queens, and they fought alongside, right? In many ways, Umay kind of embodies the ideal balance of strength and nurturing, right? So she was divine mother, cosmic protector, all of these things. In some Turkic traditions, it's interesting because, you know, you wanted fertility, right? She had to guarantee fertility and childbirth, but prosperity of the tribes, right? So the idea of that a woman's spirit could shape destiny was kind of woven into the belief a little bit, right? In fact, even in some Turkic traditions, the soul of unborn children were believed to reside in Umay's care. So if they weren't born or they were stillborn, they wound up being taken care of by her, right? Mothers would pray to her, right? And really want her favor. This is interesting. So, one of her most fascinating roles, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about her in a minute, but I wanted to put this in here because it's kind of interesting. She bestowed something called kut, and this is like a divine blessing that granted rulers the right to lead. So without the kut, a Khan's rule was considered weak or illegitimate, right? So if you think about it, the Khan couldn't have power unless a woman said he could have it, right? And that's pretty interesting. Her influence was really so profound that even some Turkic peoples that later converted to Islam, there's still reference to Umay's reverence, right? They merged their local traditions and beliefs with divine maternal figures. And so you can see her kind of transition into, because there were some of them that moved away from Tengriism towards Islam, and that kind of happened later on in history. So that's a little bit about the Turkic people, a little bit about the place of women in their culture. Now we can really talk about Umay, right? So as I said, the Turkic people originated in the steppes of Central Asia, and they had a wide range of deities, and each one kind of had their own role, right? Umay, though, was maybe one of the biggest because she was the goddess of fertility and motherhood, right? She protected life itself. She kind of has some characteristics of like Demeter or Isis, but she had her own little flair to it, right? She wasn't just a nurturing figure. She didn't passively guide anybody's life. Umay was kind of a fierce woman, right? She intervened in the lives of children, mothers, even some of the greatest rulers, right? If we look at her name actually derives from ancient Turkic and Mongolian terms and kind of translates to womb, or even some say placenta, which I don't know if I'd want the name placenta, but hey, you do what you want. And that kind of makes a lot of sense, right? Because Umay's essence was tied to the beginning of life itself, right? Fertility, birth, everything like that. And also you have to look at it from this, like she's also the womb of nature, right? So she's creation and life, right? It's a foundational role of the cycle of resistance. Sorry guys, I have something in my eye and I've been trying to ignore it, but I had to. Okay. In Mongolian, the word Umay, it, like I said, directly translates to womb. So this is really giving her a strong place there, right? It's interesting because I think if we think of Central Asia, we think of like nomadic tribes of Mongolia, you think like dark hair, right? But when they depict her, oftentimes she has golden hair and it radiates like the sun, you know, it's this powerful symbol of life, right? Basically saying like she could illuminate and sustain life all throughout the world, right? She was a mother figure, yes, but she was like the eternal force of the cycle of nature as well. And despite the themes of motherhood, she was uniquely tied to, as I said, the spiritual and political systems, because as I said, the Khan couldn't have its kut or blessing unless she gave it to them. So it's this very interesting situation where, yes, primarily men were the leaders, but they needed their mother's blessing, I guess would be kind of how I would translate it. Symbolism for her is kind of rich and layered if we're talking about that. The sun, gold, color yellow, right? All about vitality and life giving, you know, that kind of thing. Obviously, the sun is the ultimate source of energy and warmth, right? Gold, eternal nature. All of these are important. In some depictions, Umay is shown with 3 horns, which hold kind of deep symbolic significance. Let me make sure. The 3 horns represent her triadic power: creation, protection, and fate. And I think that's pretty. And because she had those, she was maybe one of the most revered goddesses of the Turkic pantheon. And I say pantheon, and I don't know how people are going to feel about that, but basically that's what it is. All of these are mythologies, right? Worship of Umay wasn't like grand temples. There wasn't monumental structures. That wasn't, most of them were very intimate rituals. They were very personal and just kind of invoked her in her daily life, right? Oftentimes women and children would wear small amulets that featured her symbol. Pregnant women would offer gifts in hopes of receiving her divine blessing. Shamans, called upon her during rituals, especially when they were blessing warriors for battle, kind of like doing that. Umay worship was pretty deeply personal and often tied to some of the most intimate aspects of life, birth, survival, and the future. I will say it to the day is long. One of my favorite things is talking about archaeological findings, right? I think archaeologists are superheroes, and that's just kind of how I see them, right? So we have to look to them if we're trying to figure out how we know the Turkic people actually worshipped Umay. And there's some significant insights, right? One of the most important sources of evidence comes from the Orkhon, I think I pronounced it right, inscriptions. And this is basically some big stone carvings, or monumental, not big, but you know what I mean, carvings that date back to the 8th century. These were found in Mongolia, and they contain references to Umay. The ruling elite of the Turkic Khaganate that commissioned these made very, very specific mention of Umay, right? And this, because there was such specific mention, it shows that she was not a minor deity. She was kind of something that's super important. On top of those written records, archaeological teams in Mongolia and Kazakhstan have uncovered petroglyphs, so that's ancient rock carvings that depict kind of this motherly figure with sun rays. And scholars kind of believe this would be like one of the earlier representations of Umay, and that even further reinforces, right? So it shows that she kind of just grew with them. She's something super important. On top of that, there are burial sites of noble women from these regions that have golden ornaments adorned with symbols thought to be linked to Umay as well. And that kind of shows that she was not only worshipped in life, but also in death, right? The golden ornaments could depict fertility and motherhood, and they were kind of probably used as like offerings and connections to Umay, right? These pieces of evidence really helped kind of piece together what the Turkic people thought of Umay and how they felt, how they worshipped her, right? I would say, like, if we're talking about the significance of Umay, she was a mother goddess. She was kind of always talked about with Tengri, right? They were kind of like, I guess if we looked at it, it would be like the Zeus and Hera kind of thing. It's sort of. Some myths actually talk about her helping Tengri kind of shape human fate, right? And like I said, the interesting thing is, even as Islam began to rise among the Turkic peoples, Umay's influence didn't fade completely. In some places, she merged with local folk beliefs, and she became like a guardian spirit of women and children. So she stayed alive even after their transition to a more a monotheistic religion, right? Debatable, but that's a topic for another story. I don't want to get in trouble too much. Anyway, so now we know a little bit about Umay. And once again, I'll repeat, guys, a lot of this stuff, honestly, there's not a lot of written stuff down, right? So when I do the next part, which is story time, I sometimes have to go off of the vibes and the feelings and kind of go rogue a little bit and just build something, right? So I just want to kind of let you guys know that before we go into story time. And as usual, since we are going into story time, if you want to grab your beverage of choice, whether that's a cocktail or a cocoa, grab a blanket, curl up, and let me tell you a story about Umay. Like all great deities, Umay is not just a figure distant reference, but one whose presence permeates the lives of those who call upon her. The Turkic peoples wove stories around her that revealed her powerful and personal connection to the world. One of those stories paints a vivid picture of her nurturing and protective nature. And this is it. Imagine, if you will, a cold, starry night on the steppes of Central Asia. The wind howls through open plains, carrying the promise of winter's grip. Inside a small yurt, a pregnant woman lies in labor. The warmth from fire does little to comfort her as she feels the weight of both fear and exhaustion. Childbirth in these harsh lands could be deadly. Many women did not survive the journey to motherhood, and she fears she may be one of them. Desperate and filled with dread, the woman closes her eyes, offering a silent prayer to Umay, the goddess of fertility and protection. Please, goddess, she whispers, I am afraid. Help me bring my child into this world safely. As she sleeps, her mind drifts into a dream. In this dream, a golden-haired woman appears before her, radiant and powerful. The woman's eyes glow like the morning sun, piercing the darkness with a warmth that fills the dreamer with hope. Her presence is overwhelming yet comforting. Fear not, daughter of the steppe, the goddess' voice rings clear and strong, a voice that echoes with I will guide your child into the world. The woman awakens as the first light of dawn spills through the cracks in the yurt's walls. The pain is past, and in its place is the sweet cry of a newborn child. A wave of relief washes over her. Her son has arrived, strong and healthy, just as Umay had promised. She feels an unexplainable connection to the child, a deep knowing that something divine has touched their lives. The village shaman visits the mother and child, sensing the blessing upon the baby. The shaman, after performing an ancient rite, declares the child has been blessed by Umay herself. This child, the shaman says, will be special, his fate intertwined with the goddess's favor. The mother and father, overjoyed, named the child Kutlubol, meaning blessed one. In honor of the divine blessing he received that fateful night. Years pass and Kutlubol grows into a mighty leader, brave and wise beyond his years. Those who meet him speak of a presence that guides his decision, an unseen hand that steadies his resolve in the face of danger. As he rises to prominence, he never forgets the woman in his dreams, the woman with the golden hair who promised to guide him. In the depths of battle, in moments of uncertainty, he feels the gentle reassurance of Umay at his side, always watching him. This myth, one of many, reflects how the Turkic people saw Umay not just as a goddess of fertility and protection, but as a very real intervening force in their lives. To them, she wasn't just a distant abstract deity. Umay was an ever-present power, watching over mothers and children and guiding those chosen by fate to lead their people. Her influence reached beyond simple prayers and rituals. She shaped the course of history through a quiet yet unmistakable touch. The myth of Kutlubol is a reminder of how the Turkic tribes saw the world, where the divine wasn't confined to temples or idols, but was present in every moment from birth to leadership, shaping the very fabric of their existence. And that's a little story of Umay. I hope you enjoyed. I really enjoyed learning about her. Actually, I'm so interested in Tengriism now for a lot of different reasons, and the Turkic tribes. As so, I really think I'm going to dive more into it on my own. If I start being able to make money doing some other stuff, get my business up and running, I'd really love to add a third podcast. I think one on just in general, like religions of the world and mythology and stuff, instead of just focusing on women, just focusing on everything and kind of looking at it not only from a mystical and spiritual aspect, but also maybe like a sociological and historical frame of reference as well. Anyways, that's kind of me just rambling a little bit about maybe what's going to happen in the future. And yeah, we'll stop that. As always, guys, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you really are got a little inspired to check out Umay and the rest of the Tengriic gods, the Turkic gods. We'll go both work out. Anyways, as usual, guys, like I said, if you want to reach out, there are ways to do that in the description box. There's also ways to support the podcast. At the very least, I really appreciate you guys to like, comment, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff so that we can get a bigger community talking about these amazing ladies. If you want more information, check out my Medium publication. And if you are interested in mystical, spiritual stuff, and if you like mythology, you might be, check out my other podcast. It's called Our Mystic Road Trip. And there I talk about tarot, crystals, herbs, life coaching, wellness, spiritual chakras, all kinds of that stuff. So if that's something you're interested, check that out as well. And then I think that's it, guys. Until next time, guys, don't forget to check out Thursday's episode because the first one is going to be on Kutulun, who is an amazing Mongolian woman. Oh, she's badass. Anyways, yeah, check it out. And as always, guys, stay curious, stay blessed, stay safe.